It's more personal. We're going to talk about some atheists and some philosophers. Let's see if they could live by their teachings. Let's see if they could be consistent. So we'll begin right here. And my good friend Glenn will signal me when it's a good time to have the break. Thank you, Glenn. Atheism, before we look at the lives of some atheists, just a couple quick things about atheism, which I think you've covered all of this in compelling evidence. An anti-position that's indefensible. An atheist claims that nowhere in the universe is this all-knowing being. But in order to know that nowhere in the universe is this all-knowing being, you would need to know all of the universe. You would need to have total knowledge in order to deny that there exists any being with total knowledge. Thus the claim self-destructs. Logical. And so often, just a very simple analysis. Pay attention to what people say. It's an anti-position. It's more like an opinion than an actual position. The consistent atheist would agree that the universe has no meaning. We may say it's meaningful, but we're just seeing our own reflection in the puddle, basically. Now, there's one fun thing you can do. I am playing a bit here. I'm kind of blending the concept of semantic meaninglessness with existential meaninglessness. If you let me get away, it's kind of fun. Everything is meaningless. This is if Solomon didn't really believe that you should fear God. Everything under the sun is meaningless, vanity, emptiness. Well, is your statement meaningful? Well, if they say yes, then everything's not meaningless. If they say no, then everything is not meaningless. So either way, it doesn't make sense. In fact, one of the strangest things about meaning is that we seek for meaning. Why would anyone seek for ultimate purpose or meaning if there was no ultimate purpose or meaning? I mean, animals don't seek for that. It's hard to see why there'd be any evolutionary advantage in seeking meaning. Where do we get the idea of meaning from if the world really doesn't have meaning? That's a tough question for the atheist. God's invisible. Now, there are two ways to take this argument. My brother helped me to see that, God could be omnipresent and of some materiality unknown to us. But ignoring that possibility, he may be right. God is invisible. And that's usually taken as a great weakness. Where's your God? I'm talking to him right now. Where is he? Oh, he's here. You just can't see him. Well, he should do something. Well, he did in history long ago. I see. And he's coming back. Yeah, but we don't know when. Sweet. You have an answer for everything. But maybe here's an answer. Since God, if he were visible, I don't mean cause himself to be seen, but if he was actually material, something you could see in a telescope or microscope, but it would be worse than that. Because he's omnipresent. He's not just omniscient, all-knowing, omnibenevolent, all good, right? He's omnipresent, all present. If he filled the whole universe and he was visible, meaning he was material, there wouldn't be any room for atoms or anything. We couldn't live. Atheism misses the point about the existence of God. Often he or she says, well, I don't believe in God. Well, whether the person believes in God or not is irrelevant. God is or he isn't. Now, in this postmodern time where reality is supposedly socially constructed, we really need to wake people up. Faith doesn't determine truth, it recognizes truth. Better a strong faith? No, better a weak faith than a strong bridge, and a strong faith than a weak bridge. You can believe all you want, but if that bridge is rickety and you're going to fall down 1,000 feet into the canyon, it's of no advantage to have greater confidence. But if it's a strong bridge, even a little faith will get you across. Faith does not create reality, doesn't change reality as such. And what's so important, and we'll talk about this when we look at Nietzsche very soon, if there's no God, there is no morality. 3 of my public debates so far have been with an agnostic, who's a columnist for Scientific American. He knows that arguing that there is such thing as right and wrong is really difficult without God. And he says, well, obviously there can't be any absolutes without God. No absolute right and wrong, no absolute ethics. But he doesn't want to be called a relativist because he knows that that's a slippery slope. So he has a middle term. He calls his ethics provisional. No, not provisional. Yeah, provisional ethics. But that's relative. It's not a new category. Just because you avoided, the two possibilities and you change the word doesn't mean you change the number of categories. People know. I mean, if there's no policeman, let's say we're in Colorado, but if there's no policeman here, there are no laws, there'll be no consequences. Well, man, we can do whatever we want to do. We can get high and shoot people and speed on the highway and everything. But if you really believe there's authority, there's a policeman, so to speak, it makes a huge difference. There is a connection between God and morality. But it's not just that God keeps us honest, because God is the source of morality. Atheists can be good people. Often they have the assumption that we believe they cannot be good because they don't believe in God. We don't believe that. We believe they can't be good if there is no God. If there's no God, then there is no good and evil. It just is whatever it is. Out on the savannah, it's not really about good. Let's score. The judges can score the behavior. Okay, here's the kudu, and here's the springbok. Now, here comes a lion. There's an ostrich there. There's a zebra. Let's score them on their morality, how they're treating each other. It's nothing about morality. Nothing's right or wrong, right? Whatever is. And the same is true of humans if there is no absolute morality. Anyway, I hope that is somewhat useful, because the moral argument is a strong argument for God. If there is no God, if there are morals in the universe, there's a God. There are morals in our world, therefore there is a God. The philosopher who consistently saw where the death of God was going was Nietzsche. God is dead and we have killed him, means that there will be no right and wrong. We can what's important in that case? Power, the will to power, being the Übermensch, the Superman. God is dead, Nietzsche is dead. The atheist will also say about morality, make contradictory statements, and I think we need to help them to see it. On the one hand, and this will tie in with the campus presentation I'm doing tonight, there can't be a God. There's so much evil in the world. And what they mean is, if I said, well, you mean events that you find unpleasant? No, it's wrong. It's not. Okay, you mean absolute evil, something that's truly evil. Okay. Well, I'm talking to the campus Friday night. Then on Monday, Starbucks, talking to a campus, some guy who's really confident, he says, there's no God. There's no moral law. There's no objective standard, good and evil. Well, wait a minute. On Friday, I thought you said you were upset because of all the evil in the world. God should do something about it. And now today you're telling me that there isn't any evil in the world. So what were you so upset about on Friday? What was that? Oh, I kind of forgot. We need to help people lovingly. We need to remind them of things they've said, lead them to the conclusions of their positions. And quite briefly, that there's no God. There is no absolute morality. There's no measure. There's no way to actually determine. It's just a free-for-all. How tall are you? In my family, we range from 4'10" to 6'4". They're all full-grown adults, too. 3 of us are over 6 feet. One of my daughters, my son, and me. What if I told you, actually, I'm 7 feet tall? You're not. You say, well, measure. No, you're only a couple inches bigger than me, and I'm 5'11". No, I'm 7 feet tall. And you bring a tape measure. You're not 7 feet tall. Well, that tape measure is wrong. Well, then the whole world's wrong. Wait a minute, we have to have an agreed standard. Without a standard, you can claim anything you want. I had to fill out some medical form last week. It asked me my weight. I happened to have stepped on the scales, which I do very rarely. It was 225, which for me is a little bit light, but not bad. Well, what if I said, I want to make it 125? I'll make it 500. You can't do that. So the standard cannot be one of the things that you're measuring. Well, actually, that's not totally true. Let's say to settle a dispute about something you're measuring, you have to have something outside that system, outside that frame of reference. Just think about it. And besides, last thought under morality. By the way, if you're looking for really great, witty quotes, Muggeridge is an incredible writer. So is G.K. Chesterton. At my website, I have a whole page of cool quotes from Chesterton. Type in Chester, you'll get it. Muggeridge. If God is dead, someone else is going to have to take his place. Hitler or Hefner? The swastika or the phallus? Yeah, something will take God's place. It has to take God's place because we are religious animals. Atheists have an epistemology that is not as strong as ours. Epistemology is the study of knowledge. And why is that? Christians don't claim to have a perfect knowledge. But we believe that God created conditions that eventually would have lead to humans having brains that could adequately grasp, not perfectly, but adequately grasp the world in which they live. I don't have to be all completely knowledgeable about everything in order to function. You don't either. But if you frequently misinterpreted reality, missed all the cues, you'd probably die pretty soon and kill other people too. Why do we believe we can trust our eyes, our vision, our brain? None of us trust it perfectly if we're humble. We believe that the Lord has given us this ability, and it works. But we don't have to be perfect. We only need an adequate knowledge of the truth, not a complete, not an exhaustive knowledge of the truth. Well, if the atheist is right, and there's no God behind evolution, then his brain really is the product of something random and amoral, something without any purpose. Shouldn't he be a little hesitant to trust his conceptions of reality? He has no warrant, doesn't have the strong warrant to trust his brain the way we do. So that's something else to think about. And my last thought on this is that typically the atheist doesn't become an atheist by saying, I just don't know, there are all these worldviews. I'm going to take a month and study Islam. Then I'm going to take a month and study Eastern pantheistic monism. And then I'm going to take a month on Mormons. And then, no, it's not quite like that. Often he was religious to start with, or he was secular, but a pretty good guy. And that meant he had some rules. He said, I will never do this. I would never respect myself if I treated her that way. I will not do this. I see where it goes. But as he gets older, the lines he drew, they kind of shift, right? And he ends up becoming his own God, and then needing to justify his atheism. Oh, he heard a cool quote from Confucius. He took a philosophy class, and there were some conundrums posed. It's difficult to believe in God. Right, the problem of suffering. Where is God? Where was God? And so he pieces together this collage of ideas and justifications, and he works backwards. And he hasn't really thought it through. Backwards reasoning. You rarely meet someone who says, I've been so much better off as an atheist. You're not going to read how atheism is the Midas touch that'll improve your discipline and your work habits or marriage and make you a better mother. It doesn't really have anything to offer. And it does not prepare us for death. But it appeals to our base nature. I found this at a website years ago when I first, I was first actually on the web. No God, no guilt. Of course, that's assuming no God, no morality, which actually I think would be true. No belief in God, awakens fanatism and guilt. We won't critique them on the grammar, or the spelling. That's incidental, okay? We know what he means. Live free and responsible. Okay, I'll take those as like predicate adjectives instead of as adverbs. I would say responsibly. Oh, but I said I wouldn't critique him, right? Live free and responsible. Debaptize yourself. I wonder what church he used to belong to. And then about 5 years ago, Richard Dawkins, the most famous atheist today, begins a campaign in Britain to have people unbaptized. Because the state church in England is still Anglican, and all these babies get the little water thing. And it's a campaign to get people to be debaptized. I thought that was interesting. Truth is, it's convenient to be an atheist. It's convenient not to decide. It's not always the most comfortable, but a lot of people choose it that way. And besides, atheists are religious too. No one gets away from it. There are many, many problems of atheism. We've looked at these, and excuses are thrown out. Like number 3, there's so many religions, therefore none of them is right. Well, there's so many religions, yeah, maybe they're not all right, but doesn't that mean, wow, the search for spirituality is worldwide. It's global. How come everyone's looking for that? Maybe that means something. Not, well, there's so many, they're all wrong. Besides, if you have 10 answers to a question, it's quite possible that 9 of them are wrong and 1 is right. I heard the Bible contradicts itself. I usually tell them, what contradiction were you thinking of? Half the time they can't think of one. And that's humbling. And then the other half the time they got something which is easily answered. But if we invited them to the last class we had, it would take us longer to sort them out. People will claim to be agnostics because it's convenient. But really, it's often lazy. Now, that was atheists and atheism. Wait a second. Take a 30-second fellowship break because where's the other half of my presentation? I just did this last weekend, so I know it's there. Hey, turn off your sound. Well, that's interesting. Was any of you with me in Atlanta last week? No, that's the problem. So I haven't really talked about when I talk about the atheists, what I like to talk about typically are the atheists who have shaped our society. It's okay, we're fine. I like to talk about Karl Marx because he had an incredible impact in economics, in the deaths, enslavement of tens of millions of people. Sigmund Freud is important as a very intelligent atheist who persuaded many intellectuals that God is simply a projection. That's an important atheist. Can you think of a third one? Karl Marx for economics, Freud for psychology. Madalyn Murray O'Hair, maybe not of the same stature, nor Ayn Rand, but we could put them in there. People have influenced Western culture. A bit louder, please. I heard a sound, but I couldn't tell. So you don't think there are many atheists out there? Well, I'll help you out. I mean, to me, Nietzsche is the guy. Nietzsche is the man. My friend Glenn, how many minutes do I have? Is that right? Then I'm just gonna keep plowing ahead. Cool? Can you do a term search? Find what? Something that's on your PowerPoint, just search for it. It's probably better this way. Could search. Let's see if I typed in Marx. No. There's a genetic copying error, which goes back many versions. But it's okay, my friends. Let's press on. But before we talk about philosophy, any questions about atheism? Anybody?
Is there any type of argument just about mathematics? The fact that it's true, it's reliable, it's consistent, it's understandable. Anything along those lines that, I guess it's reasoning and logic and rationality.
Is there anything about mathematics that could be used in this kind of discussion? Yes, there is. The way I approach this, and I do this in compelling evidence, so sorry if you've just read it recently, but there are a number of things in our world that are real that are not physical. And when I say physical, I would include invisible, atomic particles, I would include energy, but things that are still real. At least 7. Can you think of one? Anyone but Dawn. Think of something that's real, but you can't touch it. Gravity, good and evil. Say again? Love. Oxygen. You can touch oxygen. Gravity is a physical thing in that it can be measured. It's subject to equations, right? There's the gravitational equations that Newton worked out. But love is real. We talk about morality, we're talking about something real. Of course, I would say God is real, but you can't measure him. Sorry? Thought? Thought. Now, some people would say your thought is just physical activity happening in your cortex. Kind of the neuro guys are in two minds on that, I think. But thinking, thought, you could say the human soul. The ones I usually mention, love, justice, number. Where's the number? How many of you believe in the number 6? Okay, where is it? What color is it, Daniel? How much does it weigh, Julia? The numbers are real. I mean, they're incredible. It's not just the rational numbers, it's the irrational numbers. It's those special numbers like I, pi, e, for natural logarithms. Mathematical relationships like the Fibonacci series that pops up in nature over and over, and even in mathematics with fractals. Numbers are an amazing world, but you can't touch them, science just has to assume them. Logic. Prove logic. Well, you can't, unless you're being self-referential, in which case it wouldn't be a proof. You can't prove that there's logic. I can't prove that Daniel is Daniel. You have to make an assumption. You have to assume that logic works. You have to use logic in order to prove logic. So logic is something you just accept. Science. Even science and the basic axioms at some point have to be assumed. So there are many things that are absolutely real, but science has nothing to say about them. Science cannot prove the axioms of mathematics. No one can photograph, all the odd numbers in November. They are not measurable. You can't see them, but it doesn't mean they're not real. And if that's true for numbers and science and logic, if it's true for things like love and justice, why not for angels? Why not for God? So that's very useful. You can use that. Does that answer your question enough? Were you steering me or were you asking me? You were asking me, okay, good. Anyone else on atheism? Yeah, Julie. So you find the moral argument quite convincing, but it becomes difficult when you try to use it on people.
Do you offer any just tips on maybe some things you say or how you approach it when you're talking with them?
Could I offer some things I might say so that it doesn't get out of hand and get slippery and everything? Well, I mean, the consistent atheist will say, I don't believe in morals, or I make my own, but you don't believe there's any absolute morals. Because why would it be? I mean, you know what you think is right or wrong. You don't want me, you don't want society imposing on you. You trust your own judgment, right? Okay. But actually, I think some things are absolutely right or absolutely wrong. Well, that you're entitled to your opinion, Julia. So, okay. Well, I noticed that your baby's due in a couple months. I'm inviting some of my friends over to the hospital. We would like to eat your baby when it comes out. Would that be okay? What? You think it'd be wrong? Absolutely wrong? Surely you don't mean it's absolutely wrong. You mean it's not your preference. You wouldn't choose that. You don't mean it's wrong, because nothing's really absolutely wrong. And I know you talked about your younger brother. We'd like to torture him. We'll ignore the Amber Alert stuff. We're going to really go to town with him. That's not wrong. It's just, for us, it's our truth. There's always some line. People say, well, that's always wrong. Well, would it be wrong for me to force my faith on you? They'll almost always say that's wrong. Torturing babies, they'll say. Killing, if you ask them, would you kill? Often they say, I wouldn't, but I wouldn't choose that one. Adultery, they'll normally agree, but sometimes they say, but if I had to sleep with the prison guard to be released and meet my children, that gets a bit trickier. And it makes the conversation longer than necessary.
What if they were to say, like, okay, yeah, that's my preference, and it just happens to be those other people's preference too?
What if she responded, this happens to be, yes, that's my preference and other people's preference? Then I'd say, so you don't actually think it's wrong for us to eat your baby? Well, I'm going to do that, because I think it's actually good if I do. In fact, I also think it'd be a better world if we got rid of gypsies and Slavs. We should kill all the homosexuals, handicapped people, and Jews. We'll kill 13 million of them, and Europe will be a better place. Because as we see from nature, to be the Superman, the Übermensch that Nietzsche spoke of, we need to purify the race. For me, that's my good. That's my reality. That's good. If you're in the way, you're an object. How dare you stand in my way? Step aside or face the consequences. People are naive and often so flippant. The issue of the existence of evil in our world is a huge issue of great weight, just like the existence of good. They trivialize it when it becomes about preference and pleasure. And I'm not hurting anybody, so I'm just doing this in my private home. The articles on morality we read back in one of the early weeks of this course, I would go back to those, because I think that answers that. Okay, maybe one or two more. Feel free to ask questions back there, Glenn, if you like. Go ahead. Thank you. How about the argument that because of religion, many terrible things have been done? Some people even say religion causes evil to be done. So how would we respond? And that's a common argument today. Okay. Let me tell you my opinion first, then maybe we can share some specifics. I think that we have to own this and say, yes, horrible things have been done in the name of Christ and in the name of Muhammad. And I spoke yesterday about the Buddhists who are persecuting the Muslims. We know about the Hindus who kill the Muslims who kill the Hindus who burn the Christians to death. I mean, religious people do this all the time. But I think the real causes of war and actually many of these behaviors, it's not religious. The causes are political or economic. And maybe politics and economics are two sides of a coin. Think monetary power. People go to war. One people invades another, or there's a dispute and they settle it by fighting. Because people want more property, more power, more control. They do it in the name of their god or gods, because that gets people fired up. So religion is pressed into service to justify otherwise unthinkable actions, otherwise unacceptable courses of action. So it's not the religion causing it, the religion is being kind of taking the credit for it. Now, if I say, well, are you talking about Christianity hurting people? Oh yeah, like what? I mean, you're not being cute, you just want to know what they're thinking. Well, they were thinking of the Inquisition. Formed in the 1200s, it's really in full swing in the 1400s to the 1700s. Hundreds of thousands of people tortured and killed, especially in Spain. And the Inquisition still exists today. The Catholics never dismantled it, they just stopped using torture. And part of that's because they got disestablished. You don't have state churches in most places. Well, how did Jesus teach people? Gently. What does Paul do in his letters with his apostolic authorities? He threatened people, and he's going to put them on the rack. He appeals to them on the basis of love. I mean, read Philemon, for example. What these people are doing is unchristian. But they were Christians. Say, okay, I don't want to argue about words. They're Christians and they're Christians. Sadly, most Christians aren't Christians. Just because something's done in the name of Christ doesn't mean that Christ sanctioned it. That's a key point you've got to make. So on the one hand, you don't want to say, well, I'm a true Christian. If I had lived back then, I wouldn't have signed up for the First Crusade. When Pope Urban was offering the full indulgence, I'd have spent no time in purgatory if I took part in the First Crusade and I was going and I got to Jerusalem in 1099 and I killed these Muslims. And it's easy for us to say we wouldn't have done it. Jesus told some people in his generation, you say if we lived in the time of our forefathers, we would not have killed the prophets. Yeah, but you're coming here and decorating the graves. You're not really that different from them. Because if we come across smug, like, oh, those are false Christians, I would never do that, half the time it kind of backfires. They just think you're arrogant. So I think we need to own it that we have a problem. But you do too. It's a problem the Bible calls sin. It's ugly. That's why we need God. God's not the problem, God's the answer. So, and then you can make the point about being done in the name of God doesn't mean that God's causing it. And particularly, you can say, all the things that people criticize the church for are actually forbidden in the Bible. In the New Testament, look at this, how we're to treat others. So something like that, some sequence like that, okay? So we're actually getting into some cultural apologetics because this doesn't have to be after a lecture. This is the kind of stuff that you're at the bus stop, or you get on the bus and you strike up a conversation and you mention, you're carrying a Bible or whatever, and someone says, well, you're a Christian. Well, how would you answer this? Do it right there on the spot. Humbly and gently, but you need to be concise. And then I think it's the last week of this course, we'll have practice, putting together arguments so that if someone says religion has done more harm, we actually know that atheism has killed far more people than religion has. If someone makes that argument, then Tim, you already, and tip of your fingers, you have 4 responses you can give because you've memorized the responses. And then maybe you even added. So that's the compact arguments part of this course, which is later this month. 1 or 2 other thoughts, perhaps? Or a question? I mean, atheism and philosophy kind of flow together because we're talking about ideas, right? What's wise, what's not wise? Go ahead, Danielle.
So one of the first things that you mentioned with atheism was that for an atheist to say that there is nowhere in this whole universe is an all-knowing God would be to claim that you are that God yourself, because you
I mean, you would have to certainly do your due diligence to canvass, and probably you've never even been outside your own solar system, and there are many other solar systems that are blocked
Right, so that makes sense.
from sight.
So would that mean that most really respected atheists are really more agnostic because their argument would fall from under that point?
There is such thing as what they call them the new atheists, who tend to be in-your-face militant atheists, like the late Christopher Hitchens, Daniel Dennett, Sam Harris, Richard Dawkins for sure. But I don't think most atheists are like that, even those who've really thought it through. It'll be more, I see where religion leads. I don't really see the evidence for God. Seems like all religious people are claiming the same thing, whatever their religion. I'd be open, but I don't think it even works. Logic works for me. Science works. It's more that kind of approach. So, are they fully atheistic? It kind of depends. I mean, my first debate with Shermer, he said, I don't know if there's a God. He's an agnostic. I don't know if there's a God, and neither do you. Well, he assumes I don't know either. It's a bit of a big assumption there. How do you know I haven't experienced God? How do you know that? Are you in my head? I'm not in your head. How did you get in mine? So, anyway. And then, of course, that's a real agnostic who says God is unknowable. Not the soft agnostic, I don't know if there's a God. That just means I've not actually processed any of the evidence. I've not made any effort. So I don't even have a leaning. I just don't know. That's D-U-N-N-O. I don't know. As in D-U-H. Duh. I can't be bothered to think. That's lazy thinking. You think it's fashionable to be an agnostic? It's not fashionable, in my mind, to be a soft agnostic. A hard agnostic I can go after. They're not so slushy. They don't melt in your hands. You can lead them somewhere. And an atheist, we can have a great talk. But the soft agnostic, well, you just never know what you get. Okay. Fire away, Bill. You heard a description of an agnostic. Someone who hasn't. Someone who's not thought about it long enough to figure it out. Yeah, that's someone who's not isn't just. That's not really agnostic. I mean, people can change the meanings of words if they want to. I thought you were going to tell that joke. You know that.
Because I was agnostic at one time, and I finally realized, oh, it's because God is inconvenient. That's why I'm agnostic. God, if there's a God, oh, the things press upon him. There's rules. There's things that I should be doing. But if I don't admit that there's no God, then I can just.
It's very convenient. Yeah, I think it really comes down to. It's much more about your relationship with your girlfriend than, the teleological evidence for God. The evidence is solid. What you're doing with your girlfriend, you shouldn't be doing. And that's really what's stopping you. But I thought you were going to do that joke. Did you hear that joke? The agnostic who struggled with dyslexia, who stayed up all night, couldn't sleep. He was trying to figure out, just wondering, is there a dog? No, okay. So, shall we break? Or break dance? I like to see Glenn break dance. I used to break dance. That's how I lost my hair. Okay. A glimpse of where we're going. Actually, no. Let me just start the couple minutes because we'll end on a lighter note. Okay. Philosophy from the Greek philosophia, love of wisdom. So, everyone's a philosopher in some way. We think we are. So this is another diagnostic test. Yesterday morning's diagnostic test was easy if you had done the material. The following quiz consists of 4 questions and tells whether you are qualified to be a professional. Okay? You all right? Note, if you've already taken the test, please wait patiently while others take it. Don't say anything if you've already taken it, all right? That's my only request. How do you put a giraffe in a refrigerator? Well, you open the fridge, put in the giraffe, close the door. And this question tests whether you tend to do simple things in an overly complicated way. 2. A little bit different. How do you put an elephant into a refrigerator? Ideas? Open the fridge, put in the elephant, and close the door. Wrong. Correct. Open the fridge, take out the giraffe, put in the elephant. This tests your ability to think through the repercussions of your actions. The Lion King is hosting an animal conference, and all the animals attend but one. Which one does not attend? Right, the elephant's in the fridge. So this tests your memory. Did any of you miss any of these yet? Probably. Even if you didn't get the first 3 right, you got one more chance. There's a river you must cross, but it's inhabited by crocodiles. How do you manage it? Swim. All the crocodiles are attending the animal meeting. This tests whether you learn quickly from your mistakes. According to Anderson Consulting, 90% of professionals got all 4 questions wrong, but many preschoolers got several correct answers. Anderson says this conclusively disproves the theory that most professionals have the brains of a 4-year-old.